In this Godot tutorial, I'll teach you how you can make single tiles on your tile map interactive, and at a bonus at the end of the video, I'll teach you how you can replace single tiles at runtime while you're playing your game. Let's get started. Now, on our map, we got a couple of chests. 5 of them are closed, 2 of them are open. At the end of this tutorial, we'll have made sure that these tiles, which are in a tile set in a region with closed and open images, that the ones that are open, number 1 and number 3, are interactable, and that you'll have the trigger in your code to make a loot panel appear or to have golden items pop out, drop on the floor for the player to pick up. And that once they have been looted, their tiles are replaced with the tile images that represent an open chest to give the player the visual feedback that this chest has already been looted and that he doesn't have to go there anymore. Now, to get started, we first need the trigger so that the code knows when the player is close to the chest. We cannot do that here in the tileset editor, as the tileset combined with the tile map are basically just a lot of textures stitched together and nothing else. So we're going to build this in a separate scene so that we can add that to our map. So we're going to go over to scene, we're going to get a new scene, it's going to be a new 2D scene, and I'll change the type from node 2D into a area 2D. Now this area 2D will require also a coalition shape so that it knows what area it needs to be detecting things. This coalition shape is going to be a circle shape, as we want to have an even circle around our chest for detection. And when you click on circle shape here, a little extra option pops out and you can change this to whatever radius fits with your tile set. If you have a bigger tile set, bigger images, you might need a bigger circle. 50 works pretty well. I experimented a little bit before we started. Now I'm also going to be renaming our node to loot area. I'm just going to give it loot area 1 because we'll be adding a lot of them, and there will be maybe loot area 1 to 25 in the game. And also I'll be adding this node to a group, and I'll call that group loot areas. Now with that group, I'll be able to connect all the areas we'll be adding to the map. We'll be able to connect all their signals up pretty quickly and pretty easily. So with that done, we're now going to go over to some functions that you can use on your tile map that are actually necessary to add this region at the right location on the map. So let's get into that. Do you want to learn how to design and make games, or maybe you just want to learn more about Godot? Subscribe to this channel and don't forget to hit that little bell icon to make sure you don't miss out on any videos. Personally, I'm working on a new title called Soul Whisper. It's going to be a multiplayer strategic squad battle RPG, and I'm live streaming the game development sessions every Tuesday and Thursday on Twitch. We also got a new Discord server up, so check out those links down in that description below. Now let's continue. For this tutorial, I'll be adding the script where we put those functions in on the specific tile map that is currently containing my chest. This tile map is basically only containing the chest that I've added to the game, so I've made a specific tile map for that. You can add this code to the main map node as well. That might even be a better place, but to separate the code from the previous tutorials in this series from this tutorial, I will be adding it to this interactable. So I'll be adding a script here. And I've prepared this sort of a demo a little bit to teach you 3 important functions on your tile map that you probably want to be using a lot. And they're very important to learn, and they're, let's say, they're intermediate level Godot. So first off, we have to get used cells by ID. And we have to add an ID number to that. Now, to know which ID number your specific tiles are, when you open a tile set and you click your tile sheet, you actually have ID numbers right here. This 0 till 9, those are the ID numbers. Now this region of 4 tiles in a atlas tile, that is ID number 6. So that means that not every one of these 4 tiles has their own ID. No, it is this entire atlas tile that has an ID. So that's important to note. Going back to the script, we're going to print that so you can see that what that's going to be retrieving, and what it will retrieve. It is going to return an array of all the cells with the given tile ID, and that cells, that is the grid cell. So when you are on your tile map and you go to the inspector, that's going to be based on this 64 by 32. These are not going to be global coordinates. Now, because they're not global coordinates, that is where you got the map to world for. Basically what this takes, this returns the global position corresponding to the given tilemap grid-based coordinates. So this is going to be retrieving grid-based coordinates, and with the map to world you can then turn that into world coordinates. This is going to be taking a vector2, and that is exactly what is being pushed by this function right here. This retrieves a vector2. Now then you also have, of course, you want to know which specific tile within my atlas tile. Remember we got 4 chests, there's 4 images in there. We want to know which of these 4 is being used, because we want to determine whether the chest was already opened, yes or no, when we load the game, you know. Remember, we only want to be able to make those chests lootable which are currently have the closed texture. So we need to know which texture is specifically used in that ID. For that we can use the getCellAutoTile coordinate. Now I know that it has the word autotile in there, but basically what this function does is any tile that has a region in the tileset editor. So that's both autotiles and atlas tiles. So that's a little bit confusing, but you can use this function just fine. What this does, it requires an X and a Y, and it requires a autotile, a cell coordinate. So it requires this, the grid-based coordinate and not a global position coordinate. So we have the use cell tiles. We're going to get retrieve index 1 because this is going to retrieve an array. So this is going to retrieve all 7 chests. So we're going to get the first chest in that array, and then we're going to get, these are vector 2s, then we're going to get the X out of the vector 2, and we do exactly the same here, but with this one we retrieve the I. Now what this actually does, let's give you a quick demo because this is under the ready function. So let's go back to the let's make this smaller. So we got the output right here, we got the code right there, and we will put this one right here. So what this does is first it's going to be retrieving all the chests. So we got 7 chests in total. So you see we get an array here at the top with the grid-based coordinates. So there's 64 by 4 means if you go to the 0, which is way up there somewhere, you go 64 tiles down. Remember, this is 45 degrees turned as we're working in isometric. If you're working straight down, it will just be a straight line horizontally. Now it's diagonal. So we go 64 tiles, let's say, to the bottom right, and then we go 4 tiles down. So basically that will be here, and then it will go there. And that's how that grid-based works. Then we, on the second formula, take the map to world, we take that vector 2, we turn it into coordinates. So apparently this is 1920 by 1088. So that's the exact coordinate where that tile is located. And we also can see that the getCellAutoTile coordinate is 3.0. So what that means is that that image, you can see with the grain bags to the left side, it's an open chest, and this is the first one because this has the highest Y coordinate. You can see these are ordered by their Y coordinates. We go from 4 all the way up to 21 there. The 21 will be this chest right there. So with that 3.0, what that means is when we go back to our tile set, we make this a little bit bigger. So this chest is going to be 0, 0. This is 1, 0, 2, 0, 3, 0. So here you can see that that image is the same as the image we had on our map. So that coordinate is basically the X coordinate and the Y coordinate, just like a position, but then based on region. So if this were to be a region of 8, then this would be 0, 1. This would be 1, 1. This would be 2, 1. And this would be 3, 1. So that's how you can determine which of the tiles is actually in your tile regions is actually currently being used, and that is what we're going to be using in all those functions together to add all our area to these that we have created earlier to our map. To add those areas to our map, I've created a little bit of code based on this demo that we have just been going over. So let's paste that in here. So what happens is first we determine the loot area. We're basically going to be preloading that loot area 1 scene that we've created earlier in the tutorial. That's going to be right there. I basically just copy pasted that path in there. Then under the ready functions, we're going to get that use chest tiles, all the IDs. So that's going to be giving us the same array as we just had in a demo. But now we're putting it in a for loop so we can go over every single one of them. So for every tile that's being used in that, or that is being retrieved by this array, and remember that's an array of vector 2s based on the grid cells, we're going to be inputting that first in a if statement, that if the tile the x coordinate and y coordinate is equal to either vector 0, 0 or vector 2, 0, basically, which means that these two vector 2's, based on our grid map that we retrieve the coordinate from, these are the two closed chests. Remember that the 0, 1 and the 1, 0 and the 3, 0 are the open chests. So we first determine, is this cell a closed chest? If so, then we're going to be creating a new variable called loot area instance, and that will be the loot area, that will be this scene that we loaded earlier, and we're going to make an instance of that. Then we set the position of that instance equal to map to world, and then we input the vector to tile that is currently in this loop. So that will be also based on this use chest tiles. So that's how we use the third function. And then we add the child to the scene in the loot area, and the child that we add is the loot area instance of which we have determined the position. So with debug visible collision shapes on, if we now play this game, we should see all our area to these now added to the world. So now all our chests have an area to do, and you can fine tune this area to D a little bit to maybe be a little bit offset. Maybe you can bring it a little bit lower in the loot area 1 scene itself to make them picture perfect. We don't have to do this for this tutorial. I now just want to teach you how to make sure all these triggers are working. So let's get into that next. So to connect all those triggers, we first have to wonder, where do we want to connect those triggers to? I personally prefer to split the mechanics of the game, the code of the mechanics, from the player input. To that end, I usually add my code for player input on the graphical user interface node. Now, a graphical user interface node is a canvas layer, as that will always stay within the camera area, and therefore it's perfect to put things like health bars of the player and stuff like that. I'll be renaming this to graphical user interface, and I'll add a script to it. On that script, I'll add two very basic functions, and these are going to be the two functions that we're connecting the signals of the area up to. Now, these are going to be very basic with two prints, basically a print for looting and a print for leaving, so we can test if it works. Now, under the interactables, what we need to do is we need to connect to that graphical user interface for our signals. So we're going to go with an unready function. This is going to be executing the moment the node has finished loading. Unready, we're going to go create a new variable. That variable is going to be the map scene graphical user interface, and that is equal to get node. And then we need to go, as we are on the interactables, we need to go up 1 to the parent, so that's a double dot, and then down to graphical user interface. Now with that, we have a reference to the graphical user interface, and as you can see, I've already added some code here. Now this code is now working as we have now got this map scene graphical user interface. What this code does, as you remember, in the loot area, we added the loot area into this group, into the loot areas group. Now by doing so, we can now go over every area in the node group's loot areas. And remember, we have added all those loot areas with this piece of code. So we're connecting all those loot areas, and we're connecting the body entered and the body exited functions. Now, I've never explained that in a tutorial before, but these signals that you usually connect through right-clicking and connect, you can also use exactly these signals that are standard signals. You can connect those up through the code by just naming their exact function name. So body entered, all non-capitalized, body entered, all non-capitalized. You can simply use that, and that will connect this signal up through the code, and that gives you that body back as well. So you don't necessarily have to have the nodes available. You can just do it through the code. We're going to be connecting those towards MapScene GUI, and we're going to be linking up those two very basic functions we've created. Now, these standard signals, body entered and body exited, they give us a variable, and that's the body, the node variable. Therefore, under the graphical user interface script that we just made, I've also added that body reference as something that this node is going to be receiving. Now, with this very basic print, looting and leaving, we can run the game. It's not going to be perfect yet, we'll make that, but you can now see that when we enter this area 2D, you'll see down here in the area that you've got a looting and a leaving. But this whole bunch of looting 5 times is actually the area 2D detecting the collision shape of the tile. So the collision shape of the tile, which makes the player bump into the chest, is also being detected by the area 2D. So we need to fix that up. To do that, we're going to go back to the loot area, back to the inspector, and we're going to be fiddling around the collision layers here. We don't want it to be in collision layer number 1 because that's where the collisions of the map are already in. And basically, this doesn't need to live in any layer because this is not something that's actually an element on the map. It's only be detecting other elements on the map. So we only need to activate the mask. Now we need to make sure that the player lives in layer number 2 so that this mask can detect the player in that specific layer. So we're going to go to player, and there we have already added the player into layer number 2. So you got to make sure you check that box, else this won't be working. Now when we play the game, you'll see that those 5 times looting is not printed, and we're only printing looting and leaving as we enter a area 2D, and we can still bump into these chests as that is in layer number 1. So with that, our signals are connected to the graphical user interface. So now in the graphical user interface, we can program the player input to start a looting sequence or have gold or swords, whatever, pop out and fall onto the floor. And we can start making sure that that image changes based on player input. So let's do that next. Now for this tutorial, I'll be making an action button. So we're going to be assuming WASD movement, and we'll assume that button number F is going to be an action button. An action button that when you're close to an NPC, you initiate a dialogue, you're close to a door, you load a new area, or when you're close to a chest, you're actually going to loot it. So that's what we're going to be assuming as player input. To do that, we're going to go to project settings. We're going to go over to the tab input map, and we'll create a new button, which is going to be called action. So this is going to be a generic button. We had this little plus, we add the key, we press the F, and so we program the F key to be the action. Now with that done, we save that, we go over the graphical user interface. I've prepared some code for us. What we're going to be doing is that at the start of the game, the action state, we're going to create a state machine. The action state is going to be off. Now that same off, or let's copy this a little bit larger, we're going to go that the moment we leave a loot area, we need that same state to also go back to off. And of course, when we enter a looting area, we want that stage or that state to be equal to loot. Now what happens under the process delta function, the game is constantly going to be listening to the input is action just pressed action. That action, that's the name of the key we just programmed. If you have named that differently, then of course you need to change this name. We're first going to do a print. I pressed action. This is for testing purposes, so I can demonstrate to you how it works. And we're going to match the state of that button. We basically give it a state machine. When it's off, you're not going to do anything but print. I got nothing to do here. And when it's the state loot, this would be where your function would come to load a loot panel, like I've created in the inventory series. Or it's going to be a function that makes gold or items pop up on the ground. Now that could be a function itself. You could put it in here, but it's more logically to make the function reference here and build the function underneath, or even to make it a signal here that's going to be signaling to somewhere else in the code. For now, we're just going to print, I'm going to be rich. Now with that done, if we go and play, you can now see that when the game loads, we enter this area 2D. When I press F now, you can see down here in the editor, I pressed action and I'm going to be rich. If I'm down here, it's leaving, is now I got nothing to do here. You can see it right down here in the editor. So now we have a way that the player can interact with that, and now we can put code here or function references to make sure that now actually something that's going to loot that actual chest, you know, now you're going to be rich. So of course, once you have looted, we also want to make sure that that texture changes. That's what I've promised you at the end of this episode. So let's now learn how you can change tiles at runtime while you're in the game. Right. Changing tiles at runtime. For this, we'll have to be making a couple of changes everywhere in the code we've been going over so far. In order to keep this tutorial in a pace that you like and that you don't lose your concentration, I've changed all the code already, and we'll be going over step by step from the start to the end what changes I've made to make sure that this all works. So to start off, the first thing we did is we made this area 2D. I've now given this area 2D a script to temporarily hold two variables. That's going to be the tile, that's the grid-based coordinate of the tile map, and the tile region, that is the specific region within the atlas tile. So this is going to be the texture within the atlas tile that's currently being loaded. So what we do under the interactables in the code where we add the area 2D to the map is we have added 2 new lines of code, and those are going to be filling up those variables. Those are going to be pushing information to those 2 variables within the loot area 1 script. So the loot area instance tile is going to be equal to the tile that we're currently going over. So that's the grid based location where that area 2D was added. And we're going to be saving the actual auto tile region that we have been, it's basically exactly the same function as here. Here we're comparing it to a vector 0, 0 and a vector 2, 0 to determine is this a full or closed loot chest texture. And now we're just pushing that information to the area 2D. So now that area 2D has that information, this loot area 1 has that information, now we can retrieve that information when we're connecting the signals up. So when we're connecting to the map scene graphical user interface, we're going to be pushing the specific tile and the specific tile region of the area in the current loop. So when we're looping over all those areas, that means that those signals are now going to, or that signal is going to be received by the graphical user interface. So on the loot area entered, and I've closed all these functions so we can go over it one by one and you're not distracted by everything else. Now we have a tile import and a tile region import. I've added the word import to it because I've also added 2 variables on the top here, tile and tile region, and that's just to differentiate between the 2. It would work without the word import, but I like to have these 2 different, else the code looks weird. So when you receive the signal, you can change how the variables are called by defining different names between the brackets here. What we're actually doing with the tile import and the tile region import is that we set the tile equal to the tile import, and the tile region we set equal to the tile region plus, very important, vector 10. You can sum up 2 vectors. So whenever we get a chest which is going to be 0, 0 or 2, 0, this is now going to make that either 1, 0 or 3, 0. And those are the regions that of course represent the empty chests. So that's very important for what we do next. Because what we do next is right here. This is the function and this is the actual description of the function from the documentation, and I've added that because this function is a little bit more complex. So the first thing we do when we're on the tile sheet here, we are under the graphical user interface. So first we have to get the tile map where we want to change a tile off. So we go up to the parent, the double dot, and then we go into the interactables. That's of course where our chests are. Then we're going to set the cell, and first one thing the set cell requires is an X and a Y coordinate, and those are the grid-based coordinates. So that is the tile that we have imported, and the tile we have saved into this variable right here. We can now take the X, which is, of course, this is a vector 2 still. We take the 0 and the 1 that represents the X and the Y of that tile grid-based coordinate. So this is going to be covering X and Y. Then the tile is actually the tile ID of the tile set. So we know that our chests are stored in tile number 6. That's pretty much where we started this tutorial with. Then we can set the flip X, the flip Y, and the transpose. Well, in this case, we need none of this. So we set that to false, false, and false. And then we can set the auto coordinate, the auto tile coordinate. So that's of course now the new texture, which we have saved under tile region by adding vector 1.0 to it. So that's going to be the tile region that we saved in that variable. So now when we play the game, that's going to of course give us the error. We need to delete this documentation sentence. Now when we run the game and we walk up to one of these chests, we can now loot these chests, and as you can see, the chest now opens up. The problem is when we open these chests, these area 2D are still interactable. So if I keep pressing F, I would be able to keep looting this chest. So we have to change one more thing. We have to make sure that this area 2D deactivates the moment it's looted. So let's do that next. Then we'll do another demo without this blue circle so you can really see how this works and how it looks good. So to turn off that area 2D, we first need to know which area 2D of all those area 2Ds we need to deactivate. So to do that, we're going to go back to the interactables, and in the signal that we connect here, we're not only going to be pushing this tile and this tile region, we'll also be pushing the area. And the area is a reference to the simple node reference that is in this group. So we're going to be pushing the node reference to this area 2D. Now, of course, it means that the graphical user interface is going to receive an extra signal. That's going to be our area import. Now I've created an extra variable on the top here called loot area, and in this function we're now going to say that the loot, we got to do that correctly, the loot area is going to be equal to the area import. Now with that done, we can create a new function that I've pre-created. So we're going to get the node, and we're going to get the string towards the loot area, and then we're going to get the path. So we get the path to the loot area, and we turn it into a string, because under this loot area we need to get into this collision shape, and we want to disable it right here. So we need to go into graphical user interface. We're going to get the string towards that loot area node, then we're going to add / collision shape 2D to it, so we get into that collision shape of that specific loot area. And then with the function set the third, this makes sure that this area 2D is going to be turned off. The collision shape is going to be turned off on the next frame. That makes sure that you don't run into a couple of errors, especially on mobile devices. I believe Android is very sensitive for this. So we're going to set the third. That means we're going to change this variable on the next frame. The variable we'll be changing is the disabled variable, and we set that disabled to true. So that disabled refers to this disabled right here, and if you hover over it, you see that the property is called disabled. That's the property we're calling there. Now when you play the game, you'll see that once we are at this area, and when we press F, not only the chest opens up, but also the area becomes gray. That means that it's no longer available. And as you see, I've pressed F, so I was in looting range right here in the editor. I press the action, I'm going to be rich, and as the collision shape has turned off, now it's leaving. If I now press the action again, I say I got nothing to do here. In other words, our state machine has recognized, hey, we have looted the chest now, and we cannot loot it again. Now we can also do this in the debug vision collision shapes off. We can play it right here, and now this all looks as you would expect it, with the right textures being replaced for every chest, and we cannot add chest twice, and the empty chest of course didn't have an area 2D in the first place. That's it guys, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Like I said guys, if you enjoyed this video, smash that like button, hit subscribe, don't forget that bell icon. And again, if you're curious about that title that I'm producing myself, Soul Whisperer, check it out on the Twitch stream, join the Discord, talk about tutorials, talk about the live streams, talk with other game devs, share ideas. It's a just new Discord server, so don't expect it's busy yet, but hey, be one of the first to join the community, and I'll see you there.